President Trump exploring tariffs on copper to counter national security risks posed by China. His new directive coming as his administration aims to secure U.S. dominance in critical materials for technology and defense. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
And President Trump on Tuesday signed an executive order to order an investigation by the Commerce Department into potential tariffs on copper, a metal that administration told us is critical to the production of EVs, solar panels, as well as U.S. weapon systems.
With starting the process to potentially impose tariffs or other trade barriers to prevent this ongoing dumping of copper and to protect the American manufacture and production of copper.
It will have a big impact.
Top trade advisor to the president, Peter Navarro, told us in a press call today that is to address national security threats. He says as China is trying to dominate copper markets with subsidized and cheap products, the U.S. risks not having enough copper for its AI, EV, and even defense. He says China has successfully expanded its economic influence in sectors ranging from steel and aluminum to solar panels and electric vehicles. It is now using that same model to gain control of the world's copper markets. President Trump just this month announced a 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Also on critical materials, President Trump says that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy could visit the White House this upcoming Friday to sign a deal on its rare earth minerals.
We're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back.
He also again teased an economic deal between the U.S. and Russia. Meanwhile, some shakeup is happening right here at the White House. The White House press secretary announced on Tuesday,
moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team, offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots.
And on the shakeup inside the federal government, Trump today again backed Elon Musk's initiative to ask federal employees what they got done last week.
So if you don't answer, I guess you get fired. I mean, everybody speaks for me. I'm the one. I'll take responsibility.
The White House says Elon Musk will join President Trump's first official cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
And on immigration, President Trump today unveiling a new gold card plan that could replace the EB-5 investment visa. $5 million is the cost. Trump saying it's targeting job creators.
We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people.
Trump says the revenue will help to go pay down the national debt. He adds it will not require congressional approval since it's not giving people full citizenship. And House Republicans still have not voted on their budget resolution, unsure if it has enough support to pass the plan, clearing, however, a key procedural hurdle earlier this afternoon. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more from Capitol Hill.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is putting the House's version of the budget resolution to a vote on the House floor this Tuesday. At least 4 Republicans are still no votes.
But I think the most important thing to realize is that we do have an opportunity to focus in on the waste, fraud, and abuse. When you look at the numbers, it's $30 to $50 billion a year, which would be, it could be close to $500 billion just in that realm to tackle that waste, fraud, and abuse. And if we make the program more efficient, we could actually make sure that the people who it's intended for are the recipients, our seniors, our developmentally disabled, other people with disabilities, and that's what my focus has been.
Congressman Byron Donalds, a Republican from Florida, urged his fellow lawmakers to vote in favor of the House's budget resolution.
What do you have to say to those House Republicans who think that there's not enough spending cuts?
As far as I'm concerned, we need to be cutting as much spending as possible. We're spending $7 trillion a year. A lot of that is wasteful COVID-era spending from the Biden administration. So I would really implore some of my members in Congress who are concerned about re-election prospects to do what's right fiscally for the nation, and that success will lead to their re-election efforts in the future.
Congressman Pete Aguilar, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, dared House Republicans to face their constituents after today's vote.
Our challenge to House Republicans is after you pass this budget today, which cuts Medicaid by $880 billion, go home and have a town hall with your constituents. See how they feel about what you just did. If you're going to rip away health care from people, then you ought to be able to defend your vote directly to them. But that would require the House Republican Conference growing a spine.
The House's version of the budget resolution asks for $1.5 trillion in spending cuts and allocates $4.5 trillion to extend the Trump-era tax cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump today doubling down on his support for Elon Musk's request for a 5-point list from government employees about what they've done on their job throughout the week. But not everyone is happy. Are these complaints about DOGE overly politicized, or do they have some credence? Today, joining us with their assessment is Democratic political commentator Josh Lafazan and conservative commentator Scottie Hughes. Josh Lafazan, Scottie Hughes, thank you both so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, getting a ton of attention. It's now saying it's mandatory for federal employees to report what they did last week, or they're at the risk of being fired. At first, several federal agencies told their employees not to reply, potentially for classified information reasons, not to expose any of that. Here's a clip from Republican Congressman Rich McCormick reacting to this situation.
Like you could see with Elon's mandate to turn in an email, right? Some of the actual appointees by Trump have said, we're not going to do that. So there's going to be some arguments amongst the party, kind of like a church or family. There's always going to be discussions about what's good medicine.
Scottie, what do you make of the congressman, Republican congressman from Georgia there?
Well, he's handling it a lot more gracefully than the meltdown that I'm seeing others. I mean, gosh, are we any surprised that politicians don't want accountability? They're afraid that what's going to happen next is Donald Trump might tell each congressman, tell me the top 5 things you accomplished last week for your constituents. And so if that is what they're worried about mostly, so I think that this is absolutely a great way and a great precedence that's being started.
And Josh, is this, just being politicized, or do you think there's some validity to some of the complaints about mixed messages?
Well, sure. So I think the overgeneralization here, right? Elon Musk is the single head of DOGE, right? And taking an above-the-board approach for the federal government, which is the largest employer in the country, I don't think necessarily makes sense. Federal judges got this email, and federal judges don't work for Elon Musk, and NIH scientists got this email, and they don't work for Musk. So again, I'm a Democrat who does not blanketly oppose DOGE. I think lifting up the hood of the car and seeing what's being spent in a $6 trillion government, you're damn right there's money that we can be saving. And Americans don't like when their tax dollars goes to bad uses. But I think it's this one-size-fits-all approach that might work for Elon at SpaceX and Tesla when he is the king. But in the United States government, individual bureaucracies appoint to their superiors.
Except, Josh, can I make one point to that? Unfortunately, we have seen in history, as the last over month, that Elon Musk has shown fraud and fraudulent email addresses and spam that's not been accountable has existed in every department. So who's to think that it doesn't also exist on email? So what better way to make sure that every federal employee checks their email than to say you potentially could be laid off if you don't? I get national security. Those people should be exempt. They answer to their superiors, judges, anything that puts us at risk on those side of it. But what else? How else do you check and make sure when you notice that it's happening? Fraudulent rosters are on every other department. How do you get every federal employee to check their email, then threaten them with their job?
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily disagree, right? I don't disagree. And what I'll say is this, right? The American people are watching this and saying, gee, I have to tell my boss 5 things I did this morning, not 5 things I did this week. And so I want to take a nuanced approach here that yes, the American people want accountability. And yes, Democrats would be wise to not seem out of touch when everyday Americans have to be accountable to their boss. What I don't like is this above the board approach where, for example, we fire the head of the Nuclear Security Administration and we have to rehire the folks who oversee the nuclear program, or we fire the people who oversee the bird flu and have to rehire them. So I think a little bit of circumspection, a little slower, and a little better process in concert with Congress, I think would make everyone happy. But Elon Musk doesn't take my advice, and we'll see if he continues to rub some people the wrong way.
So tell us, what are some of the most significant actions that DOGE has taken up until this point in your view?
Well, I think what's happening is you're having accountability for the first time in every department. Anybody who's ever had to work with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, having to get their parents on or get their children in some sort of government service has realized that it just is not easy. It's very complicated. And there's several layers of bureaucracy. So I think the number one thing he's done right now is he's, one, put these departments on notice that you've got to have some sort of accountability going on within your department. But two, he's already going in, and we're seeing, and while we point out all of the USAID, just the absolutely crazy things that are being listed internationally that we've been supporting, I think here at home, what it's going to do, it's going to take that money. I mean, when you're already talking about some potentially a $5,000 check in every American family's mailbox, that right there shows that there's actually some waste that has been found at no fault of the Republicans or the Democrats. It's the fault of everybody in government right now. And he's showing that that's how much waste has been going on for not only the past year, but for decades here in the United States. And I think that's actually a good thing.
So, Josh, with that said, obviously the operative word that we're learning more and more about is bureaucracy and the layers that lie within, and just how difficult it is and how deep it runs throughout our government, left, right, center. What measures do you think will have the greatest impact long term? And do you expect to see kind of a wider perspective and more reporting from some of the legacy media outlets talking about some of these substantive endeavors?
I do, and I appreciate Scottie's mentioning that it's not a Republican or Democratic issue, right? This concept that it's simply the Democrats who let this go on for too long, and it's a condemnation of both parties in D.C., where both parties got us into this mess, and both parties are going to have to get us out. $36 trillion in debt. Just like every household watching, if they have debt, they have two ways to get the debt gone. They have to raise revenue, and they have to cut spending. So they have to make more money or take more money in, and they have to cut spending and make sure less money goes out the door. So we know in the $6 trillion government, so much of that savings is going to be at the Department of Defense. The Pentagon has failed an audit for the last 10 years. So Trump says, and Hegseth says he's going to let the Pentagon be audited. Let's see if they actually do it. I think I'm a Democrat, and I think that's a good thing. I think we have to look at the biggest drivers of spending, savings at the Defense Department, fraud and waste in Medicaid. Right, we're not going to balance the budget on the backs of middle class and lower class workers. The Republican proposed budget cuts taxes for the 1%. And I believe if you have debt and you have to raise more revenue, cutting taxes for the richest in this country means you're not taking in more money. And then all you can do is you can cut spending for people who need it most.
Josh Lafazan, Scottie Hughes, appreciate you both joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
The Supreme Court throwing out the murder conviction and death penalty for an Oklahoma man who was found guilty in the killing of a motel owner 27 years ago. Richard Glossip has steadfastly maintained his innocence in the 1997 murder of his former boss, Barry Van Treese. Glossip was convicted and sentenced to death. Today, the justices ruling that prosecutors' failure to turn over certain evidence violated trial rules. Glossip is entitled to a new trial. Quoting Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing for the majority, Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissenting, voting to uphold that death sentence. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.